here sitting next to me is Mahlon Mitchell. He's the president of the Professional Firefighters of Wisconsin. I believe I hope I said it correctly.
You did.
Okay. And if folks have seen YouTube or gone to the Jobs and Justice website, they'll see clips of Mahlon leading a chant about workers staying together, and I forget the chant. I should have written it
This
down.
is what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
That's right.
And then leading the firefighters into the Capitol during the protests against Governor Walker's attempts to take away collective bargaining and fire folks and all of that. And the great thing about it, and this might be the last you hear from me, because I want to listen to Mahlon too, is that the firefighters and police in Madison were exempt from this legislation. And the fact that they said, no, we're going to stick with all of the public employees, that this isn't right, even if you exempt us, I thought was very laudable and inspiring. So,
Thank you.
So Mahlon, you are the president of a statewide. You didn't use the word association, but it's actual union then.
Yeah, well, we're the president. I'm the president of the State Firefighters Association, Professional Firefighters of Wisconsin. We represent over 3,000 firefighters across the state, 57 local unions. And our main job is to be the political arm for unions across the state. We have a lot of unions that maybe only have 20 locals. We have unions that have up to 500 locals or have up to 500 people. So we're basically there to make sure that we help to advance legislation that serves the interests of firefighters throughout the state.
And so that's a little different than I thought. So you weren't just representing Madison firefighters at all. You were representing firefighters in the whole state, pretty much, who belong to that association.
Right, and I'm the state president of the state association, but I am a Madison firefighter as well. So that's where the confusion, I think, comes into play. I've been on the Madison Fire Department now for 14 years. Got hired at a young age, actually 19 years old. I was fortunate. I've been a lieutenant now just since January with the Madison Fire Department, but we represent the entire state, except for Milwaukee firefighters.
That's what we were talking about earlier. They kind of went in behind this because it didn't affect them. They went ahead and did that then. Yeah,
when this came out, Governor Walker actually was backed, endorsed by Milwaukee firefighters as well as Milwaukee police officers. The Professional Firefighters of Wisconsin, my organization, we actually backed his opponent, Mayor Barrett, who's the mayor of Milwaukee. So that's where the confusion comes into play. A lot of people think that we backed Governor Walker. Well, we didn't. It's not a political payback for us to be exempt from this bill. And to speak on Milwaukee as political payback, I'm not going to do that, but we actually backed Mayor Barrett, who's a Democrat. Governor Walker was a Republican in the race.
So whose decision was it to stand up and do what you folks did when you marched in rallies and you marched into the Capitol? Was that a decision that was made by all these different members?
You know, I get a lot of the credit, but it was a decision made by my executive board. Our executive board is made up of 11 members across the state. All principal officers of their local unions, but also on the state executive board. So we came together. This came out February 12th, I believe. February 13th, I had a conference call with all the executive board members to say, hey, look at this legislation, look at this bill. Even though we are exempt, we're still ultimately affected by this, because this is not just an attack on the unions. It's not just an attack on workers' rights, but it's an attack on the middle class. If you look at Governor's bill, and I won't go over the specific details, but there's 6 provisions in the bill that basically strip away the collective bargaining rights of the AFSCMEs, the SEIUs, the teachers' associations. And we just cannot sit idly by and let that happen and let everybody else be treated so radically different than what way we were being treated. Because it was just an injustice. And as a wise man once said, an injustice to one is an injustice to all. So we stood up. We're going to continue to stand up. We've been there protesting every day. And that's what you'll see on TV is the bagpipers and as firefighters from all across the state. And we come there and we make sure to help build the morale of the people. We sit in students. We actually slept at the Capitol a couple nights. Police officers are there with us as well. And we're standing up for workers' rights, standing up for the middle class.
What seems to me that that may not have gone the way it went without the firefighters and the folks who weren't necessarily under the gun standing up. I think that made a powerful statement.
Well, it was an obvious attempt to divide and conquer the unions, to put us off on an island by ourselves, treat the other members this way.
Right.
And eventually it would come down and trickle down and affect us. And we weren't going to sit and let that happen. We're not going to let them divide and conquer the movement. Because this is not just about me. It's not just about other people in the state. This is about our future, our kids. It's about a way of life. And I don't even like to call this a movement, because movements end. I like to call it a way of life. And right now there's an attack on the way of life. There's a nationwide attack to balance state budgets on the backs of workers, teachers, nurses, snowplow drivers. You may not need them out here, but I can tell you in Wisconsin, we need our snowplow drivers. You need an umbrella out here, it seems. But
yeah, you noticed that already.
Yeah, we need our snowplow drivers in Wisconsin. Our people that work in the clinics. I mean, we need all those people. Those are the hardworking people that make our lives easier and make Wisconsin a great place to live. And it is not their fault that we're in a recession we're in. It's not their fault that we had a state budget crisis. It's just, and I won't get into the particulars of that either, but it's deregulation of the banks. It's the housing boom in fall. It's not because a person that's making $14.57 an hour and gets a good benefit package at the end because they take a lesser wage at the beginning. That's not the reason that we have this problem. It's not the state pensions. People will lead you to believe that it's because of state pensions that we're in this fiscal crisis. Well, that's not the truth. 99% of state pensions are solvent. They have the money in there. It's a defined benefit program.
Well, I think that's part of what was going on. You said divide and conquer. I think that they were trying to divide not dividing union people from non-union people, but even dividing some union people from the union that you belong to, which is, you know, state employees or whatever.
Right.
So I forget what the name of that employee, but it seems that what was going on, because all of a sudden, you know, on right-wing radio and TV, you saw all kinds of things coming up about how employees such as yourself are making so much more money and all that because, you know, you belong to a state union or whatever.
Right.
And was that anything that had been going on before? Was that awareness there, or was that created for this?
Well, it's created, and the budget crisis, in all honesty, at least in the state of Wisconsin, is created. When Governor Walker took over, we had a $121.4 million surplus. And now those are real numbers. That came from our Legislative Reference Bureau, who's a nonpartisan body that basically looks over the state fiscal matters. First month of his tenure, he gave $106 million tax credit to corporations, and another $83 million coming. So yeah, now we do have a $141 million deficit come June 30th of this year.
He came out of the gate just like George W. Bush then.
Yeah, and we just changed our law actually to mirror California, 2/3 majority to raise any state taxes. You come into the state of Wisconsin, you get 2 years of no taxes paid in back to the taxpayers. 2 years of free income to any corporation coming in. That's how we're luring corporations from Illinois, luring corporations from Minnesota. But they keep telling us that our state is broke. 1% tax cut to all wealthy Americans in the state of Wisconsin, but they keep telling us that our state is broke. They told us actually from the protests that it was going to cost $7.5 million to clean the Capitol out. $7.5 million to take
because
down
of the
signs.
protests?
Because of protests. But our state is broke. But we're not going to just sit idly by and just let that happen without being heard. We know what's going on. This is not about money. They've asked for concessions from state workers. Ask Me, I think you're referring to. They've asked for 5.8% pension. They've asked pension pay-in and 12.6% health insurance premium pay-in. Well, the state workers have said okay. They said we will be willing to pay our fair share. We will give back. We don't want to price ourselves out of a job. But that's not enough. He had to reach farther and go after their inalienable right to collectively bargain, to sit down with your employer and talk about hours, wages, and working conditions. Does not cost any money. It does not cost any money. And it has nothing, it has zero to do with any fiscal matter. This is all about cutting unions, and it's about union busting, and it's about future elections. That's the honest truth of it all.
Well, since you say that you work in a political area, you know, with legislation is what your job is. How much of this were you aware of and working with before this happened?
Well, you know, that's a good question. I was in D.C. just yesterday, where if you all saw Governor Walker testified in front of a House Oversight Committee. Yeah, and I actually was sitting right behind him, and that was one of the questions that came from one of the Democratic congressmen. Is that, did you ever campaign on this? I think it was Kucinich from Ohio that asked.
I did read about this.
Yeah, did you ever campaign on this? Well, no, he didn't. He actually in the end had to say no, because he never ever campaigned on stripping collective bargaining rights.
He squirmed about that for a long time.
Never had to talk about it, never campaigned on it. To his credit, I will let him tell you that he did say that he was going to treat fire and police unions differently. He did say that. And he did say he wanted pay-ins for the health insurance as well as the pension. But never once was there ever talk about or mention about collective bargaining rights being stripped from workers in Wisconsin.
Has there been any poll done there in that state, how people would have voted if they'd have known he was going to do this?
Yeah, he would have lost. I mean, there's no doubt he would have lost. And I think it was
even in a Republican state.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, when you look at the protests on TV, and one time we had over 130,000 people there.
I couldn't believe it, yeah.
Well, it's an unbelievable sight, but it's not just union workers there. There are private sector employees there. There are private unions there that are not affected by the bill. There are people that own small businesses that are there. There was one guy that had a huge sign that said, "I'm sorry, I voted for Governor Walker. I wish I could have my vote back.
Please forgive me."
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, he's not listening to the people, but he doesn't care. He doesn't want to sit down and bargain with us and see what we can come to, what a consensus we could come to help this so-called budget crisis that we have in the state of Wisconsin.
I was just reading this little paper that gets put out once a month by Jim Hightower. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He was talking about the Koch brothers, and they're basically the ones that bankrolled this fella.
Right. He got $43,000 from outside money from just the Koch brothers alone for his election. The committee that I was there on yesterday in D.C. actually got a total of $107 million of money between the committee members. So that tells you where this influence is coming from and what is important. It's about the money. Matter of fact, our governor took a call from what was supposed to be Robert Koch, but it turned out to be a blogger in New York.
Yeah, I heard about that.
You know, and he talked about eliminating workers' rights and stripping workers' rights. And after we're done with this, we'll win the election, and we'll go out to California and have a great time. That's what was said at the end.
Yeah.
And would you like to take a bet to some of these public employees that are out there protesting?
I'll bet he would. So I think, we got 12 minutes left. We could maybe play a few minutes, a minute of this video.
Sure.
I think it'd be good just to kind of give folks a feeling for what was going on inside that the rotunda, whatever they call it. It starts out with you leading in there, and then the tape starts to pixelate and go and get weird. But I think it's a good idea to let folks see this. And a lot of them have maybe already seen it on YouTube, but it's good to see it on TV as well. And this was after you had given a talk somewhere and then marched in a rally?
Yeah, we normally started out by giving, at the protest, we would normally have a rally on Capitol steps on the Martin Luther King Boulevard side, and we would have between sometimes 50 to 100,000 people out there. And then that's not including the people that were in the Capitol. Another, let's say, 15 or 20,000 people in the Capitol. We would go in, and we were considered, at the end of the day, to be the morale boosters. As you know, firefighters, we never claim to be heroes, one, and we don't do this for the attention. We actually came to show solidarity and show support. But the movement kept getting bigger and bigger every year, or every day. And day in, day out, more people came to the Capitol and saw how important it was to come and stand in solidarity. And at times we had 400 to 500 firefighters from across the state marching in solidarity with other brothers and sisters in the union way of life.
All right, I think if we have that clip, we'll put this up now. We're back. It started getting pretty bad there in Pixelate, but that gives you an idea. And you were saying that there were firefighters from all over the state there?
Yeah, there were firefighters, and if you saw when I first walked in, the person behind me was the state executive director for the Wisconsin Professional Police Officers Association. So there are police officers in there as well. But those are firefighters from all across the state, from all different cities, from as far as Green Bay up to Needham, Menasha, up to Superior, which is about 6-7 hours away from Madison. One day we even had firefighters from New York and Chicago come in, just to show their support. And that's why I'm here too, because the outcrying of support that we've gotten from places like Portland. I was in LA, I've been in DC, it's been just simply unbelievable. Chicago, I mean, it's just people that are not affected by it. Now, we're not necessarily affected by it directly in the state because we're exempt, but people that really are not, I mean, I went thousands of miles away to LA, and the passion and the people with the Wisconsin workers' rights, and we support Wisconsin. I mean, it's unbelievable. The passion that they had for the fight that we're having in Wisconsin, people realize that this is something bigger than just the state of Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm. Well, as they say, an injury to one is an injury to all, and maybe it doesn't affect you right away, but it affects people down the road.
Yeah.
When other people, especially when collective bargaining rights are destroyed, next time you folks go to the table, you may not be as in a strong position as you are now.
Well, yeah, and that's why we stick together. I said together we bargain and divided we beg. I mean, it comes a time where we have to stay together, and that's the union movement has been oftentimes referred to as a civil rights movement right now, because of just the energy and the passion that you have people that are coming together to do the right thing. And we got to keep taking it to the streets, though. We got to keep making sure our message is heard and keep rallies up like this one, like tomorrow, because we can't get complacent with just some moral victories and some wins. We have to keep going.
Well, so that's, you mentioned the rally tomorrow. It's a good time to mention it. Greg, tell a little about the rally tomorrow.
I wasn't sure whether we were being heard over that video, but there's 63 co-sponsors, and among them are the Portland Firefighters, who are going to lead the march after the initial rally at Pioneer Square. So tomorrow, after any sprinkles in the morning, when the sun is out at 12 noon, we're going to have our rally, and Mahlon's going to give an inspiring speech there, and then we're going to have a march downtown and end up at Terry Shrunk Plaza and finish it up. There'll be some music and other speakers, and it's going to be a great time. You were mentioning about the labor movement is the new civil rights movement in a way. Well, Martin Luther King that's what he was moving into, was the issue of labor rights when he was assassinated.
That's right.
And talk about an inspiration for doing this kind of stuff. When we just had the anniversary of his assassination, and there were rallies and actions all over the country, and we had one here in Portland that was very inspiring. It was wet, but
yeah, and that was actually a National Day of Action, April 4th, like he said. We were talking about Martin Luther King, and he was down there working, marching with the Memphis sanitation workers who were on a strike.
That's what it was, right?
And he was, a lot of people might say, well, he was just down there because they were black sanitation workers. Well, that's not the truth. He was down there because they were workers, and he was down for workers' rights as well as civil rights, because he realized they were conjoined and they worked together. That's why there's such, and I think Jobs for Justice does a great job of blending in community with the union movement and the faith movement, because that's so important, because we all are one and we all work together. And that's why when you go around the United States, you see there's a "we are one" in reference to Wisconsin, because we are. I mean, this is a middle class attack, and if we don't stand up for ourselves, nobody's going to stand up for us.
And I've heard it saying that it started in Tunisia and it went to Egypt and then it went to where it is now. But and then it went to Wisconsin, and that is kind of tongue in cheek, but not actually, because democracy is something that isn't there, and you don't have to work for it.
Right.
And obviously, what is going on in Wisconsin is they're going after the middle class, but they're also going after democracy as well. And if you folks hadn't have stood up when you did, maybe a lot of them people would have been discouraged and went home.
Yeah. But
the fact that they had a strong backbone of firefighters there, I think, made all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
And we appreciate that, but we just think it's, I mean, we're firefighters, and we respond when there's an emergency. And right now there's an emergency on the House of Labor, and that's why we keep responding. We continue to respond, as well with the police officers. And you talk about democracy. I mean, democracy is important, and we always have a chant, show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. But in Wisconsin right now, they're trying to show us what hypocrisy looks like. So we're going to make sure that they don't get to say, we're going to be heard. We're going to make sure that their money, their influence doesn't drown out our voices. So that's why we're there, and that's why we bring our bagpipes, so that they know we are definitely there. I mean, some people like bagpipe music, some don't, but I tell you, whether you like it or not, you hear it.
You're going to hear it. You know, I was going to ask about it. What's with the bagpipes?
Well, that's always been a tradition with the firefighters. You know, traditionally.
Everywhere?
Yeah. Years ago, firefighters were traditionally Irish, Catholic American.
Of course, yeah.
And that's where the bagpipes come in. And you know, it's amazing when you walk into Capitol Rotunda and echoing off the walls, and you see bagpipes, and you hear the bagpipes, and you see the people when you look up to the third floor of the rotunda, and it's just filled with people. I mean, because that really is the people's house.
Well, part of that video that we couldn't watch because of the pixelation on it, the guy went like this a lot, whoever it was, and you could just see people everywhere.
Yeah.
You know.
No, it's an unbelievable sight, and it's teachers, the students came out. We actually, high school students had a sit out. They all got up at the same time, left and walked all the way down East Washington, which is a main thoroughfare in Madison, Wisconsin. They walked about 4 miles to come into the Capitol at lunchtime and show their support. Now, these are high school students. So it's trickling out. It's affecting everybody.
So is Madison kind of a special place? Could this have happened anywhere else? It just seems like it's kind of a magic place, because I know they do a lot of media conferences and things there.
Yeah.
It's kind of progressive.
Well, it's very progressive, and I like to think Madison as a magical place. I might be a little bit biased in that opinion, but yeah, I think it's magical. But I think democracy doesn't have a certain area where it lives. I think it lives all over the United States.
So
you know, who would have thought Wisconsin be known for something more than just cheese or the Green Bay Packers? So, but I mean, it was time for Madison, and if it were going to happen somewhere, I would put Madison in the top 5, because Madison has always been influential and progressive in their nature and progressive in the thought process.
How big is Madison?
We have over 200,000 people, not including the students.
So that's half as big as Portland then.
Yeah.
And you got I can't picture us getting 130,000 people to do anything in
if
this.
they try to take away collective voting.
Yeah, I guess we might.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we're doing this, and you said it well. I mean, we really have to make our demands heard, and our representatives aren't listening by writing letters anymore, so we have to get out and protest. I truly believe that that's the only way we're going to reclaim democracy, because corporations really have taken over a lot of control of these things. When you were talking about the ability to pay no taxes and to get, you know, that you were stuck with basically the tax credit that was given to the corporations was blamed on your pension. And they're doing the same thing with Social Security. Social Security is a standalone program, and it's self-sufficient, and it's fine, but they're saying that it's part of the deficit. And when the deficit is because of all of the exploitation and corruption in the corporate world that's happened. Yeah.
And we've got about a minute here, so we respond to that real quick if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, it's important, and to go back to the civil rights segue there, it's one thing, if there was one critique of the civil rights, it's that people got somewhat complacent because of the victories they got with the Brown versus Board of Education, Topeka, Kansas, the Voting Rights Act of 1964 and 65. Those victories made people stop taking it to the streets necessarily. Now maybe it's because they moved from the courthouse or from the streets to the courthouse, or maybe it was time to change it up a little bit, but I think it's time for us to make sure we reclaim our moral outrage and make sure that we are there in the streets and make sure our voices are heard. This is not just about unions. This is about a way of life. This is about middle class. It affects everybody.
Affects everybody. Well, down to a little over 20 seconds. Thank you both for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I want to let everybody know, 12 o'clock noon tomorrow at Pioneer Square. There's a march and a rally. And just like we talked about with the fellow before us, asking for phone calls. This is a good example of what happens when people stick together. You have power. You have a lot more power than money. You have a lot more power than the corporations. But you got to stand up and exercise it. So, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.